why do some messages come in and some don't, right? It's because it actually connects with what we emotionally need to be happy. You're like, hi, I'm Sandy, and what do you do? And this person's like, I'm so-and-so, and this is what I do. And then you're kind of like, oh, there's this awkwardness. Yeah. And it's that moment when you ask what I call an honest question, a question that they don't expect, that will crack people open in 5 aspects of emotional intelligence. So you've got self-perception, like what are you thinking about yourself? Are you self-aware? How do you talk to yourself? That's where it all starts, like we talked about with thought flow. The second one is really your self-expression. And I said, I had 25 years of experience building brands and communication, and I'd love to work with them. So that was achievement. And then I said, if you use these complimentary suggestions, I'm sure you'd see a lift in your ROI and your ad spend. So that was value. And I ended the email by saying,
in this episode, I speak with Sandy Gerber. Sandy is a certified communication and emotional intelligence coach, award-winning speaker, author, and entrepreneur. She's also the CEO of Next Marketing, which she grew from her bedroom into one of BC's top 100 fastest-growing companies, transferring communication for many of Canada's leading brands. A TEDx speaker, Sandy is also the creator of the Magnetic Communication training programs and podcast. Her best-selling book, Emotional Magnetism, has won over 20 awards and is taught in academic programs. She is known for her relatable style, innovative thinking, and empowering leaders to connect and communicate with greater impact. If you liked the episode, please give it a like. In the end, subscribe to our channel or give a comment if you feel like. This will support us in finding new interesting guests, growing our audience, and make those important work and messages of our guests spread over into our world. Thank you very much and enjoy the conversation. Welcome in the Awake Inside, Sandy.
Thanks, Henk. I love to be here.
Yeah, really impressive if I read your bio. And it's a topic that we haven't talked about before. It's about empathy, emotional intelligence, communication, and how we actually perform towards other people, how we get perceived by other people. So how did you start focusing and getting interested in this topic?
Well, I think it's a very important topic, especially nowadays. We really need help with communication. But I say that communication kind of started, for me, it's in my blood, Henk, because I was the kid that other kids on the playground used to say, hey, Sandy, what do I say to get my parents to say yes? So I've been crafting communication since I was a kid. My mom was a psychologist, and I was always fascinated with behavior to try and figure out what do you say and how can you get a reaction. But my passion for communication, I was in marketing and communication for 25 years. And I was in the corporate world, and I had big accounts that I was working on, and I had large teams and all that. And, about 15 years ago, I kind of felt like I was living a double life. Like I had, professionally, I was, one of Canada's best marketing and communications experts. I had, I was working on some of the best brands in Canada. I had an awesome team, a sexy office. I was killing it from 9 to 5. But personally, I was failing. And I was failing badly in my relationship. So I kind of felt like a fraud because I was doing so well professionally, but not so well personally. And so that set me on a trajectory, basically set me on a journey to really dive into communication and understand what was I doing wrong in my personal relationships that I was succeeding in my professional. And that's what set me on my path.
Interesting. So what are the skills that you need in your personal relationships that you don't need in your professional relationships?
Well, it's not that you don't need them. It's just that sometimes we're less effective, not sometimes, most of the time, we're less effective in our personal relationships, And I'm talking about not just communicating with others, Henk, but more importantly, how we're communicating with ourselves. And so I found that, you can focus on your skill set, and you can focus on leadership, and you can focus on what you're supposed to do in professional life. But the truth shines in your personal relationship. You really find out, how you're actually connecting with people or not connecting with people, and how you're speaking to yourself. So this whole journey took me, I call it my decade of self-development. Like all of us have those stacks of books by our bed and the podcasts on our phone that we haven't quite got to, or the books we've downloaded and haven't read. Well, I went on a journey to figure out, how can I be doing something better here? And what I found that I was lacking, I read every nonfiction book, every research paper I could get my hands on. And what I realized is that I stumbled upon this research in the 60s, and it was about emotional appeal theory. Now, I don't know if you know about that. I didn't know about it. I learned that from this research in the 60s, they say that there are 4 main emotional appeals, what I call emotional magnets, that drive people's behavior, drive their decisions. And, I'd read all these books and they'd help for a little while, but then I'd fall back into the same patterns, right? So they only helped for a little while. But when I read this book, everything changed. Like I was able to actually filter why I'd made the choices that I had in my personal and professional life, and why I'd behaved the way I had in my relationships. And a lot of it stemmed from me not understanding truly what I emotionally need to be happy. And so that fueled my whole, I started telling people about this information that I found. I started understanding why I made the choices. I started looking at people with more empathy and less judgment. And I started understanding what I truly need in my relationships, personally and professionally, to be happy. In the past, people would say, "Oh, Sandy, you're on to the next thing, or you're never satisfied, you're never happy." And I was like, well, actually, I realize that my emotional magnet is experience, and I need to have constant experiences. And I also need achievement. And so that's why I was always on to the next thing. And once I realized that and shared that with the people in my life, people started understanding why I was making the choices I did, and we had better connection. And so I think, through this journey that I went through, Henk, I really learned, at that point I was telling people, oh, look, I found this information about myself. Like we do, right? We learn something and we want to share it with people right away that we love. Like, this is what I learned about myself, and this is how you can better yourself. It's just what we do. And so I started sharing that with people. And they started seeing a big change in me, and they started being able to identify what their emotional magnet was. And then they go home and they tell their family, and it just started having this ripple effect. And I realized, I should start using this everywhere. So I ended up using it on my first date with my now husband of 11 years, and I adore him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so after
it worked.
It really works, because 2 years, like I had 2 failed marriages before, Henk. Like I was, I was burnt out. I had 2 failed marriages, and I had totally given up on finding Mr. Right. Like I was like, this is never going to happen. And when I found out more about what I emotionally need and what I need to communicate to people, to really share and connect with people, everything changed.
Yeah. Okay. So it all started by reading the book, where you actually find those emotional magnets that you write about yourself as well. Mostly it's a process. So first you gather information, and you learn from that information, and you try to reflect on that. And it's sometimes a big realization within yourself. But then afterwards, you have to really live that as well. It doesn't have to stay just in the mind, in the brain. So how was that process for you actually? And how long did you need actually to really live that information, let's say?
Yeah, it was definitely a journey, one that I would do again in a second, right? It was difficult, but it was really worthwhile. So I think, I had gone through all these different books. Gosh, I have over 100 books that I was going through and reading just everything I could to understand more about myself. And I'm a learner, and I love evolving and being a better person every day. And so I think that was part of the drive. Not everybody has that, but so that was the first part, is deciding. The first step is deciding to do the work, is deciding to examine what's stopping you from connecting better, what's stopping you from having these authentic conversations. And usually, that's dealing with what you're saying to yourself. And we could come back to that, but that's where my curiosity and and passion for emotional intelligence was born. It really was birthed in that moment because I realized, wow, there's so much to unpack here. And I started expanding, like we read all sorts of different things. We don't just stay within one vertical. So, I'm reading about quantum physics one day and the next day I'm reading about construction, like you learn these ideas from reading all these different things. And so as I evolved through that, I started just applying it and sharing it with people. And I started becoming, at the time I was in my business and I was a single mom and I was working out of my bedroom, and I decided, okay, I'm going to do this marketing consultancy and communications consultancy from my bedroom. And so I go, okay, first thing you got to do is get some sales. So I go to networking events. And Henk, I was so uncomfortable at networking events. I mean, I know I'm a speaker now and I talk about communication and people don't believe it, but I really was so uncomfortable. I used to find myself hiding in the bathroom until the speaker started, right? I just didn't want to network. Yeah. And it's because I was thinking about what do I say instead of what can I learn about other people.
Yeah, I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. As you probably have noticed, the Awake Insights podcast is more than just a place for great conversations. It's part of something bigger, the True Impact Club. The True Impact Club is a supportive community for anyone who feels called to share an important message or story and wants to reach a bigger audience. Whether you're looking to step onto stages, get featured on podcasts, or simply amplify your voice, the True Impact Club is here to help. They don't only support you in preparing for these opportunities, but also ensure you have a seamless follow-up system in place. That way, when people are inspired by your message, you can connect with them, build meaningful relationships, and even turn those connections into clients. If this resonates with you, or you want to find ways to make a bigger impact, you can find free resources on the website you can find here below. Thank you very much, and let's go back to the conversation.
And when I made that shift, I became like a little detective, right? I was like, okay, I want to see which emotional magnet this person has and what emotional magnet that person has. And then I was able to connect with them because you can pick up on it really quickly. Like you can understand just the choice of people's words, what their profession is. I mean, everything you do in your life is dictated by your emotional magnet, all your choices. So it's pretty easy to tell. And so once I started doing that, well, I'd ask better questions and we'd have better conversation and we'd connect at a level that wasn't just the surface networking level. Most people kind of after the second question in networking, I feel like everybody runs out of gas. You're like, hi, I'm Sandy. And what do you do? And this person's like, I'm so-and-so. And this is what I do. And then you're kind of like, oh, there's this awkwardness. Yeah. And it's that moment when you ask what I call an honest question, a question that they don't expect, that will crack people open and be able to have this major connection. And so this emotional magnets started leading me into networking, started leading me into being comfortable enough to share it on my first date, to say, hey, listen, buddy, this is what you're signing up for. I'm attracted by, my magnets are achievement and experience. What are yours? And he told me his, which were safety and value. And the rest is history. We've been honoring that in each other ever since. And we don't fight because we understand why we make the choices that we do. And so because of that, we have way more empathy for each other and better communication. So it started developing in my networking. It started developing in my communication and my relationship. And then it started expanding into all conversations that I was having in my life. Parenting, friends, family, strangers. But my husband laughs because when I come out of a grocery store, I've typically learned what the cashier's problem is in their life at this time. Within the time they've scanned my food, we've become fast friends. And it's just because I'm naturally curious, and even more so now, to find out what really is making people do what they do and help people to feel seen, heard, and valued.
And can you say then that you were not curious about that before?
I think I've always been.
Have you learned to be more curious?
Yes, I learned to be more curious, for sure. And when you understand more about yourself, you're always more curious about others, right? Like once we do the work, and you've done tons of work and you've had these amazing speakers on your show, and they've all discovered more about themselves and then felt compelled, almost driven to share that with other people to help them. So you become more in service to others when you've done this work, and you realize, I can actually make an impact here. I can help people. Like my whole mission before this experience 15 years ago was to make money and grow my business and to have great relationships. But my mission now is to be in service of others, to help them to communicate, to connect better with themselves, with others, even with the universe. So it shifts, when you do the work, and you've done that, right, Henk?
No, yeah, definitely. And it's something that comes back quite often. Mostly people in my generation, they already have achieved something in their life. And then there's a moment where they want to give back to the world, and they want to just share what they know. And they just want to, be of more impact than just thinking on their own gains that they can get out of relationships. Because also, I recognize a lot in what you say, actually. Before, for me, relationships felt more transactional. It's like, what can I get from you and what can you get from me, actually? And if you elaborate more on that, and if you want to go more in that empathic or that magnetic stage, then I think you can turn that and make it just a little bit more personal by asking the right questions, asking a question about someone's personal life or just how he feels about something, to make it more emotional in a way. And I think that's the switch, actually, or the thing that makes a big difference here. So do you also see that? Before, I had the feeling, I also did a lot of sales and I went to network events just like you. And for me, it was like, okay, this is professional and this is personal. And I was so split up in two different worlds, actually. And later in life, I started to realize, like, why can I just not know more about the person that I maybe want to sell something to, but just it can maybe be someone that does the same hobbies than me. Maybe we can create a meaningful connection without only trying to sell something. But I never really thought about that because I was so driven and I wanted to reach my targets and I wanted to sell. So it's a lot that I recognize in what you actually just share. So do you also think, and we already started talking about that before we were recording, do you also think that aging plays an important role in this realization and becoming just more empathic and more chill in a way and more focusing on these kind of relationships?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do. So I love what you said there because, it's almost you have this light bulb moment, right? And it usually comes after an obstacle or a challenge, right? We don't really grow unless we kind of push to grow, right? And typically. And so I think when you have separated your lives between professional and personal, like I did and like you did, you start to feel like there's something missing, right? Like there just isn't real authentic conversations and connections. People say, oh, I leave my work at work and I go home. I said, well, those people you're spending all that time with, you're missing out on the opportunity for real connection with these people.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take that much to do it, right? I say that curiosity is our superpower. It really is. It is. We are hardwired to be curious. Our brain is always urging us to discover and to grow and to evolve. And so when you actually use that in your communication, it will amplify your connection. It will deepen your engagement with people. And actually, I think the piece that people need to remember is that we all want to be asked about ourselves. Like we all love talking about ourselves. And it's just that we don't ask and engage people really authentically, right?
Yeah.
So I found that with this journey, even as we age, I think to your point, we care less about what people think. When we're younger, we really care about that. Our ego is in high drive, and you are more transactional, as you say. But I think, as I know from my situation, as I aged, I realized that relationships really are the most important thing in your life, and the people that you love, and sharing love. And in the world that we're in right now, we need to support one another more and help each other more than ever. And so the way to do that is to share what we're feeling, to share what we're thinking, to ask and be curious about other people's lives, and to remember that every single one of us is going through something right now. Like every single one of us has a challenge or a stress in our life right now. So when you think from that perspective, you automatically have more empathy, and you can really like, I just find that by asking people an open-ended question, we come into work or we come into these meetings on Zoom and we're like, hey, how are you? Great. How are you? Fine, fine, fine. It's this banter that just gets us nowhere. It's a pleasantry. And I find that when you walk into a space and you actually, connect with body language, with the pieces, like I call them connection cues, but when you're mindful of how your content is landing with people. See, we are not taught. Most of us haven't been trained in formal communication skills, and it's showing up at home and at work. Gardner research says that the number one reason that companies are making mistakes is poor communication. And, they say 70% of the mistakes at work are due to poor communication. So that's at work. So imagine if you start working through your communication skills, your empathy, your emotional intelligence, understanding why you're feeling the way you feel at the moment, and being able to get on top of that and shift and pivot that so that you can deepen your connection. It's remarkable how your life will change.
Just a quick note. I want to share something that might be valuable for those who are looking to grow their brand or their business. The True Impact Agency is a digital marketing team that supports you in building everything from marketing funnels, landing pages, to ad campaigns and custom websites. Their focus is equipping you with the right strategies and systems to elevate your business and presence. If that sounds interesting, visit True Impact Agency to learn more and book a free consultation call. It's a great opportunity to clarify your goals and take meaningful steps forward. And let's go back to the conversation. Yeah, I totally agree. But the thing is, it's in many cases just not developed in a lot of people. And then you can read a book about that and you can understand what's in the book, but that doesn't mean that you can immediately use it or do it in life, right?
Yeah. No.
So it's a journey. Yeah, exactly.
It takes practice. Like you have to, it's like when we were selling, right? When you're having to sell, you have to do more of it to get comfortable at it. It's a muscle we have to use. And the more that I came from a family of 6. And so fighting for airtime at the table was hard, right? Like everybody wanted to talk on top of each other. And that was the environment I was raised in. So I was taught that if you need to say something, you need to get on top of people's words and you need to get your voice out. Well, in a professional setting, that didn't go over very well. I interrupted, I was loud, like I didn't know any of that. We bring into the work environment and into our relationships what we're exposed to as a child and the environment we're used to, our normal, right? And our normal is very different from everybody else's. So, we don't realize that until we're in an environment with other people. I say that my kids are in their 20s now, and I remember being in my 20s. I remember having kind of a tumultuous relationship with my folks. And because I was naturally curious and I was always looking for the next achievement and experience, as a parent of me, it was difficult, right? Because I was always on to different things. And I remember, I was in my 20s and I came back to a family dinner and we're all sitting around the table and we're all talking. And all of a sudden my mom interrupts and says, "Wait, Sandy, why are you giving me that look? What's wrong? What's going on? Tell me what you're thinking." And it's like stopped the whole conversation of everybody at the table. And I said, "Oh no, it's nothing. She said, "No, what is it?" And she's like, "Well," I said to her, I looked at her and Dad and I was like, "You guys are actually pretty cool people." And she got up at the table and she was like, "Hallelujah, she's back," And I laughed because, I was 23 at the time. And I remember I didn't realize the people in my life the way they were until I was in another situation like work and met other people and realized that our normal was really spectacular as a family and that was rare in the world. And so when we're out of our bubble, when we're out of our environments that we're used to and the stuff that we're comfortable in, and we push ourselves to be a little uncomfortable, that's when we grow. That's when we learn and we grow. So I find that curiosity has always been there, but I didn't know until I became, in the professional world and until I hit a challenge or an obstacle, until things failed.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, actually, how you explain that. It sounds like you had like a good base, a good foundation to do the work that you actually do right now. Afterwards, realizing that not everybody is like you and not everybody comes out of this kind of environment. And a lot of people are really struggling with that. Let's dive a little bit deeper into
Sure.
the methodology that you explain in your book. So you talk about the 4 emotional magnets. Can you explain what these magnets really are?
Yes.
And that.
Yeah, so the emotional magnets came about from this research on the emotional appeal theory. And the theory is that all of us are motivated by 4 emotional motivators. And just 4. And so in the book, it was a bit academic. And so what I've done is I changed it to an acronym because I was in marketing too, and I love acronyms, but also to make it memorable. And so the acronym is SAVE, SAVE. And it's because it also saved my life and it saved my relationships and it's helping a lot of people in the world. So there's 4 emotional magnets, and these are essentially our triggers. These are our triggers that motivate us to act, react, and feel the way that we do. And they're developed as early as 6 years of age. It's based on your upbringing, your environment, your challenges, and your obstacles that you've gone through. And what happens is when we think of, I'll give you an analogy. So we're driving down the highway and we see a billboard. We don't really pay attention. We keep driving, and I see another one, and then we see one and we actually read what's on that billboard. So the question is, why did that one message really resonate with us when the others didn't? And the reason is those words, that message, connected to your emotional magnet. What drives you? What interests you? See, we get so many messages every day. Why do some messages come in and some don't, right? It's because it actually connects with what we emotionally need to be happy. So these 4 emotional magnets, if you look at your life and you understand what these 4 emotional magnets are, which I'll share in 1 minute, you'll be able to understand why you made the choices you did. So the first one is safety. So S stands for safety. So this is a motivator if you're motivated by security and stability and structure, self-preservation, health, your family's your number 1 priority. You need things to be planned and organized. That's the type of person that you are. You're very skilled in what you do. And typically you're in service to others. You have an emergency plan, maybe even a kit in your car in case of a zombie apocalypse. I mean, these people are on top of safety. So that's one of those is my husband's magnet. And so he likes the same things. The structure is boundaries. The second one is achievement. And that's people who are motivated by performance, by challenge, by, changing the world, wanting to do something that's going to have an impact. They love recognition. I mean, we all do, but even more so. When I'm speaking on stages, I say to people, okay, come on, give me some more achievement here, right? Because that's one of my drivers. And achievement is really, these people are not stopping at getting to success. They are driven to change and to achieve that goal. And, they've probably saved every trophy since they were a kid, right? Like these people are motivated by achievement. So the third one is value. And that's really people who are motivated by worth and growth, by their time and their investment and money is the most important to them. They want to see an ROI on their time. Can't stand waiting in line. I mean, we all can't stand waiting in line, but these people especially. And, they're thinking about their legacy, the value of their life, what they're contributing now and when they're gone. And the final one is experience. And that's really people who are naturally curious, motivated by creativity and desire, by change. They don't like the status quo. They're learners, avidly looking for the next thing and making an impact in the world. So you've got these 4 emotional motivators. And when you think about those, all of us typically think of it like a 4-lane highway. You've got safety, achievement, value, and experience. And we kind of tend to stay within 1 lane, 1 or 2. I mean, we'll swerve between 1 and 2, but we stay to 1. And also depends what's happening in your life at the time. Like my emotional magnets are achievement and experience. Now I understand why I made the choices in my career, why I'm constantly building achievements, why I need to have an experience when I'm having a conversation with someone. Like all of those things come into play. But they also change when you have things go on in your life. So a few years ago, I lost both my parents within 6 months of each other. And my emotional magnet changed to safety. right? Because I was like, okay, if this ever happened to me and my children, what do I need to do? And so it depends what's happening in your life, but they become the priority and your motivator for what you do. So when you know your emotional magnet, and it's really quick to find out. I mean, it's in my book, it's in a quiz, you can find it on my site. But if you know your magnet then, Henk, and you share that with the people in your life, they actually understand why you are the way that you are. So I'll give you an example. Like my husband came home, we were working late one night, and he said, let's order some food. So I pull up the app and I'm skipping through and I'm looking and I'm like, okay, he wants me to pick. So I'm going to pick something in his comfort zone because he's motivated by safety. And so I'm like, okay, I'll find something that he likes. And so okay, honey, how about Freshie for dinner? And he looks at me and he says, no, I can't do that. I'm like, wait, like you love their burritos. What's going on? And he said, yeah, I do, but it's 3 blocks away, Sandy. And I was like, okay, what? And then I realized, his other emotional magnet is value. He can't justify a delivery from only 3 blocks away, right? So these are the types of conversations you have. And so I looked at him and I said, okay, I understand. I get you. And I smile because I know who he is and what he needs. And I say to him, just out of curiosity, honey, how far does it have to be for it to be delivered? And he said 5 blocks. So we ended up ordering from 6 blocks away. He's happy because he validated the expense value, and I'm happy because it's a new restaurant experience. So these are the types of conversations that we have all the time in our relationships, and so many fights and relationships we can save when we understand why someone makes the choices that they do. We just honor that and understand that that's what they need to be happy.
Yeah. And is it really developed to understand each other better, or is there also a kind of way where it's you motivate people to balance that more? Let's say like you have 4 different buckets. So which bucket is the most filled and what is the most empty? Is it the purpose to balance that a little bit more, or is it just to try to understand each other better and just get along much better?
Yeah, it's not necessarily to balance it, because it's really just we're all made up of different things, right? And because of our backgrounds, it's more about understanding the choices that people are making, right? And not trying to change them, not trying to balance. It's just my makeup. It's who I am. And so, you have that person in your life, you're like, why are they like that? Like, why do they make those choices? And you kind of shake your head a bit. When you realize what their magnet is, it makes sense. Like if someone, I have this friend that has tons and tons of money, but every time we go out for dinner or something, she is looking at the bill like an accountant, right? Like she's just dissecting who owes what and stuff. And you're kind of going, in your mind, you're thinking, what the heck's going on? You've got more money than God. Like what's going on? And then you realize, she's value. Right? So she needs to make sure she's getting the value. So it almost just makes you feel more accepting of people. It does make you feel more accepting. And that's why I always urge people, find out what yours are and share them, because people will understand you better. They won't have those thoughts like start labeling you as being, impulsive or creative or, whatever words. We like to label people. So these labels start going away when you understand what their magnets are. And, it's interesting. I just started this to learn more about myself and to try and find a way to understand why I'd failed in personal relationships. And then I started sharing it with people. Then people started sharing it with people. And it kind of grew into this movement. And then people are like, you got to write a book, right? So the book came about, and then it went to audiobook, and now it's gone to programs. It's just evolving. But what's interesting is I never saw it. I just never saw the vision that it's evolved into, which is remarkable and wonderful. And now it's being taught in school. It's being taught in this occupational therapist guide on how to actually communicate within the profession and using this. And so having more empathy and understanding in communication. So I love that it's just starting to take off even more now in a way that's going to help people professionally as well, right? Because it started with me understanding more about me personally, and now it's evolving into professional as well. So I think, we just... we all want to know why we're making the choices that we are and who we are. And we want people to love us for who we are. And so, now that people know in my world, people who know me, they know that I'm driven by experience and achievement. They support that in my decisions, and it brings us closer, makes us much stronger.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a good thing that you learn so much more about yourself when you learn and read about these different kind of frameworks. And still, I think I want to come back to the fact that, okay, we learn so much about ourselves. And then you can ask yourself the question, why? So why do I want to have so much achievements? Why is that important for me in my life? Is that also something to work with for yourself? Like if you really see that, okay, this bucket is so full, maybe it's too full actually, and I have to work on that.
Yeah, my desire for, so that was the second part of this. Is the first was like, what is happening with me? What do I emotionally need? And then the second part was where I really started igniting my interest in emotional intelligence. And that was trying to understand, well, just like you asked, why do you need achievement? Why do you need experience? And it really comes down to, how it comes down to core beliefs. It comes down to self-limiting beliefs. It comes down to your childhood, essentially, right? And the core beliefs from there. Yep. And it really for me, my need for achievement comes down to feeling worthy, to feeling of value. Right?
Worthiness. Yeah, it was the word that came up in me.
It is because you're seeking that achievement for approval and confirmation of your worth, right? And so I know, having gone through the emotional intelligence certification and working in that, it's so interesting and fascinating that when I understood why I'm doing what I'm doing, and what I'm actually trying to get at emotionally, what do I need? Then it just evolved everything. And I think, people who are driven by value, people who are driven by safety, driven by achievement and experience, all of them come back to a core belief, or a self-limiting belief that they need addressed. And so for me, experience and achievement was always about worth. And also experience for me was, I ever since I was a kid, Henk, I had this burning desire to make an impact. Somehow, and as a kid, you think, I'm going to be a star, because you're young and you're just thinking you're that way. But what you're really yearning for is that acknowledgement. It's that you're of value, that you're of worth, and also that you're going to make this impact, that you're going to make a mark in the world. Like we're just like what you're doing with your program. You're trying to help people to think about things or to have conversations and examine more about their life and help them through it so that they can make a true impact in the world. And I think when we start diving into why we're making the choices that we do, you unearth this information about yourself that you just can't turn off, right? You know it then, and now it evolves you into a better person. And just as I said earlier, you just want to share that with people. You want to help people so that they can go through the journey themselves. I'm a different person now than I was 20 years ago. And I wouldn't give up any of that struggle or any of that self-examination because it's formed me into who I am today. I think, as we talked about, as you age, you care less about what other people think. I think it's also because you've done the work to understand what you need. And I don't necessarily need that accolade anymore. I need to know that what I'm delivering is of value to people. And it shifts that way. So I think it's fascinating stuff.
It's definitely fascinating. Yeah. It reminds me of a quote, and I don't know the quote exactly, that I read this week, where it says that, in many ways we want to make the world a better place, but maybe it's just good to first start with yourself.
Yes.
And a lot of people, they skip that step.
Yes.
It's really true, because you read a book, an amazing book, oh, this helped me and this and that, and then, but then your own journey has to start because you just read about it. And then it can be really a distraction to work on yourself. And then this distraction is, let's make the world a better place, and let's focus on that. And that's then the distraction to start working on yourself. And it struck me because I recognize myself in that too. And I also notice that a lot with other people that I'm speaking to, actually, that I'm thinking like, stop spending all the time, the effort and energy in just making the world a better place. Like just to start with yourself and be the example. And then the rest will just follow, actually.
Exactly.
So
I totally agree. I think, I've been fascinated with the also looked into some research around our brain and around our thoughts. And for me, this piece that I train people in is called Thought Flow. It changed my life because essentially Queen's University did this research, and in a nutshell, they found that that on average in our brains we have 6,200 thoughts in a day. An average. That's a lot of thoughts. And of those thoughts, 80% of them are negative. And of those thoughts, 95% of them are repetitive. So essentially what we've got is like a mental playlist looping in our mind that's negative. And so when I heard about that, it set me off on a path around, okay, people need to understand first, like you said, they need to start with themselves. They need to start with, what are you saying? What's your thought flow like? Like, think about a river, and you think about thoughts are coming through, and we can't stop them. They're going to come through and they're going to go. And so think of it as a river. But if you have a negative thought that's looping in there from the moment you woke up to the time you go to sleep, it's like a boulder in that river, right? The water's got to get around it and through. And so that flow that we want to have of thoughts going in and out is blocked. And so when you look at, well, what is that looping thought that's happening in your mind? Because I'm big on manifestation in the universe, and I understand that what we think about comes about. And a lot of the work that I did in self-development, it's really born there, right? Is what you think about is driving what's happening in your life, and you're attracting. And so when you think about your thought flow, if we talk to ourselves more than we talk to anybody else, right? Like, we have full-blown conversations with ourselves, right? We're like, where did I put this? And, oh, I should respond to that text. And, now I'm like walking into rooms going, wait, why did I walk in here? Like, so these conversations that we have with ourselves, and some quite mean conversations we have with ourselves. Like, we wouldn't talk to the people we love the way we talk to ourselves. And so it's really essential that we start there and we look at, what is it? What is the thought that's looping in your mind that you're telling yourself, and start replacing that thought with something that's going to actually benefit you. Because we cannot connect with others until we connect to ourselves. We really can't, because we can try, and we can have these superficial conversations, and some of them might even have some depth to them. But have you really opened yourself up to that person? Have you exposed your vulnerability? Have you shared your honest sincerity and your concerns? Probably not, right? Until you're confident with how you are emotionally, and you've upped your emotional intelligence. So I find that the best place to start is truly in understanding what you say to yourself, and then evolving that, understanding why are you blocked on certain things? Why are you struggling to meet new people? What is going on there? It's not the new person. It's what you're saying to yourself before you meet that person. Yeah. Like, I have this trick that I used to do for networking, because I had to teach myself this stuff. I was a single mom. I had to make money. I had to get over it, right? And so I created these kind of connection cues, this nonverbal body language that I used to help to help me connect with people. So I go into networking events. I call it the power of E. Basically, when you go into an event, you shape your face like you're saying the letter E. So let's do it together, like E. Yeah, there you go. So don't actually say it, because that would be so weird. But when you go into an event, it actually makes your face much more approachable. You're telling your mind to focus on E, not what do I look like, what people are going to judge me, I don't look smart enough, I don't look good enough, all that. And you're just focused on E. And what happens is you become approachable and friendly. And so it's these types of little things we just weren't taught, right? So I feel it's my passion and my mission to help people to be more comfortable to connect in the professional setting, especially. And even when you think about leadership, our body language, our connection cues, how we respond to people, a lot of this stuff we've never been taught. So it drives me to help people to do that and to pay attention. The first step, like curiosity, the first step is to be aware. Just pay attention to, are people putting their hands on their face when they're talking to you? Are they holding their head like this? Like, these are all different signs to show the person is disconnected. And then stop talking and connect with the person, right? So these are the things that that really matter.
Yeah, this is really good advice. what I think when you're sharing that is that it's difficult to notice all of that if you are fully under stress yourself when you're in an environment with other people. So I think this has to come from kind of a state of calmness. And if you cannot be in a state of calmness when you are around other people, then you have to learn how to do that. And there are also techniques to do that, to learn these kind of things, and also to stop these voices. And it will not stop completely, but it will definitely be a lot less. And also you can take the negativity out of that. And then you can actually develop yourself or train yourself or whatever you call it to become more aware and test it if you are between people, if you are in the settings with people. Mm-hmm. So it's just more than only saying E and smile. Just from my experience, it's a technique. You can do that, but it can also feel very fake and not be in line with what you feel, and it can be very in contrast, in conflict. That's the right word actually. And then that's a sign if you feel that there's something inside of you need to work on.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It's a good technique. Yeah, exactly. It's a good technique to do that when you're in, because on the other hand, you can also have like this very stressful phase where it is not attractive and people will not approach you, and
That's
people
right.
will think that you're not approachable. So in these settings, it's good to know that. But if you really go deeper, then it's interesting to go there and learn to relax.
Yes, like the first piece is really whatever you need to do. I mean, that's just one example, but whatever you need to do to shift your headspace from being about you and being about others, right? So shifting from thinking about how is this affecting me? How am I being perceived? Am I being credible enough? Do I look smart enough? All those things that we go through? And even to the point of like, does my outfit blend with everybody else here? Or I'm not overdressed, underdressed, like all the stuff that we think about. If you can shift from that space with using a tiny tool to being in a space where you're paying attention to others, then you're already ahead of the game. And that's just stuff we're not taught, right? And especially now with the pandemic and our hybrid working space and Zooming all the time, we have lost some social connection skills that we had, or unfortunately the younger generation has not learned. Right. And so you see, with the devices that we have and the screens that we have in front of us, this social connection is hurting, right? We don't know how to connect. And so what I'm finding when I'm going and speaking on these stages and training companies and teams, that a lot of them are fascinated with the connection cues segment in particular, because it gives them like a little tool they can put in their pocket to help them with their confidence. And that's enough to get them to think about other people. So some of them are like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look stupid by doing an E and stuff. I get it. Like, you got to find the right tool that works for you. But that was enough for me to come out of the bathroom and start networking, So it's really about finding the tool, whether it's in a book or in a podcast like this or in a conversation, finding the tool that you can use to give you that opportunity to grow. Because it's only out of discomfort that we grow and that we get better, right? And understand ourselves. And if you've also had, like many of your listeners may find that they've had failed patterns of relationships in their life or failures in a profession, and they need to look at that pattern and see what's at the stem of it. What is it that you're saying to yourself? Are you sabotaging yourself? Is fear getting in your way? What is that limiting belief? And learn more about their emotional intelligence so that they know how to handle their emotions in a professional or personal setting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful example, and again, another way to to take that opportunity to discover more about yourself, like reading your book and these 4 magnets. That's how you learn to more about yourself. And there are other kind of books with other tactics and frameworks that focusing on other things that are important in your relationships and stuff like that. It's really beautiful that can bring people on their path to self-discovery and make their relationships in their life just a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing that I put in my book, because, I read so many nonfiction books that I was like, when someone asked me to write it, I was like, I want it to be useful. Like, I found a lot of the self-development books, I would read them, I'd try out their little thing for a while, and then it's just gone, right? And so it would just have these short shelf life for me of changing my behaviors. It would give me some insight, but then it would pass. And so I felt like they tell you about stuff, but they don't tell you how to implement it, right? So for me, when I wrote the book, I really was insistent with the publisher that there was going to be 3 sections. The first section was going to be what's blocking communication for you. What are the things that are stopping you from connecting with people? Because we've never been taught that. Yep. And there's like 16 different ways that we block connection that we don't even know we're doing it. So giving them that awareness first. The second piece was really, the second part was about the emotional magnets. So it gives you the upside and the downside, and it tells you what to look for, and you can self-assess yourself. And then the third part was really the opportunity to give them the quiz to find out their magnets. But then more importantly, how do they start working with their magnets in their messaging? What do they actually say to someone? So, when we want something in our professional or personal life, we always think ahead of what we're going to say. So when we do that, and now some people are running it through ChatGPT, right? Like you can ask them. It's even modeled now with AI. Now we've trained them now in emotional magnetism. You can say this person's driven by value. Write a content that's gonna appeal to that. So when we look at our messaging, the words that we choose, the way we deliver our messages, all very important in how it lands with people. And so that last piece was really helping people how to message their emotional magnets. See, I used it in my business. So I now successfully done some networking using the magnets, and now I was like, hey, maybe I can use it in my sales. So I looked for an ad in a magazine. It was a shipping magazine out here on the West Coast. And I found one. I found it really quickly because it was a horrible ad. It was like the advertising equivalent of a home haircut. Like it was really bad. Right? So I looked at the ad and I said, oh, here's one. I'll send them recommendations using the 4 magnets. So I wrote to them and I said, here are some suggestions that you can use to make your next ad even more effective. So that was safety. And I said, I had 25 years of experience in building brands and communication, and I'd love to work with them. So that was achievement. And then I said, if you use these complementary suggestions, I'm sure you'd see a lift in your ROI and your ad spend. So that was value. And I ended the email by saying, I just left the corporate world to start my own consultancy as a single mom in my bedroom, and I'd love to work with them. So that was experience. Just 17 minutes later, I got an email back saying, come meet with me. And, I met with them and they became my client for 10 years and I love them. But what's interesting though, Henk, is that I said to them, why did you say yes to my email? And why did you agree to meet with me? And she said, every day they get requests from suppliers, every single day. But for some reason, Sandy, I read your email and I just had to connect with you. So that's the thing is when you use language that connects to each of the person's magnets, then they feel this that you understand them, they feel connected, and it breaks through the preoccupation of everything else, and you connect with them emotionally. So it started evolving through sales, it started evolving through networking, and then it moved into my personal relationships. And so this is when I wrote the book, it was very clear to me and to the publisher, and now in multiple languages and all over the world, it's helping people to understand themselves and to communicate that to others. See, like there's lots of books that help you understand how to do that about yourself, but not how to communicate it to people, how to share it, how to have those open conversations. And so I find like for 10 years, I was learning lots about myself and sharing to my close circle of friends. But it wasn't until I delved into the emotional magnets that I realized I can share this with anybody and we can get closer quicker. So it's really how you use the tools that matters the most.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's super powerful. And certainly your example about ads and how to message about the tone of voice that you're using, knowing actually who you're writing to, who is your audience, it's super important. And there are AI tools that can actually analyze, for example, your profile on LinkedIn, and you can actually see what kind of person that you are. And maybe in these 4 magnets, I don't know if they use the 4 magnets, but it's something very similar. And then based on that, you can adapt your message and it will resonate a lot faster and a lot better.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's so true. And on the other hand, I was thinking also when you were explaining that there is a difference between reaching out to people that you don't know yet, and also reaching out to people that you don't meet in real life, where you send a message online through text or whatever, and then in real life, meeting people in real life. And for me, I believe here it's a matter of not using all the tactics and everything that you've learned based on certain kind of questions, but try to feel as well who is in front of you. Try to feel and go in your body who is in front of you, and then these certain kind of things, they come up, and then you know what you have to answer on, what tone you have to use, or what words you have to use. But it's not easy. It takes a lot of time to learn that. But that's once you start noticing that, and I have that it's so interesting, and yeah, I love it. But it's a process, a learning process. Yeah,
it is. And I found that's why I fell in love with body language. Like, body language is just so powerful. In the first 4 minutes of meeting someone, half of our communication is from our nonverbal communication, right? So we're making an opinion based before anyone even opens their mouth, right? So when you think about, like, my mom, as I said, was a psychologist, and I remember being like 11 years old and sneaking into her library, which was huge, and stealing a book, borrowing a book on body language at 11 years old, because I had some girls at school that were by a locker that were whispering and pointing at me. And I wanted to know, was it them or was it me or what's going on? So I had that curiosity even as a young girl. And I read that, and that set me on a path of always being fascinated by body language. And so now I find that people just don't know about that. Like, the easiest way to build rapport with someone is to mirror what they're doing with their body and their gestures and their expressions and their tone of voice. Because we subconsciously, what that means is that we connect, right? And we like people who are like us, just subconsciously. So when you start mirroring the behavior, like if someone's sitting forward, you're sitting forward, someone's got their arms crossed, you cross their arms, their tone of voice, their pacing, the volume, all of that. When you start mirroring that, it's more likely you're going to have an immediate connection. And so when someone comes up, and they're really loud and they're talking, you're just kind of like, whoa. Or if someone's really quiet, you feel that before they've even started really conversing. And so to mirror someone's behavior brings in that rapport. I also think when you shift to think about, how is someone standing? What's their posture telling you? What are they doing with their hands and their face and everything when you're speaking? Like when someone's feet are pointed at the door because they want to, race away from your conversation. Well, that's actually true. We subconsciously point our feet where we want to go. So if you're in a conversation with someone, look down at their feet, see where they're actually engaged in the conversation or not, right? And so these little tips that you learn over time, and what I go around speaking on stages about and training teams, is to look for nonverbal, is to see what people are telling you without speaking. And when you pay attention to that, it's much easier to make a connection.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, these are these little signals actually that you can see, and based on that, you almost know what kind of person is in front of you, without knowing all the details, of course. But right. Super interesting. I'm curious, do you really see a shift happening right now? You were already talking about the methods in your book and all the knowledge there that is taught in schools and everything. So younger generations learn about these different things. How do these people, the younger people, adapt this information, knowing that we or me on that age, I was not interested in that and not focused on that, and I didn't know about it myself either, of course. But I'm curious how these people are adapting this, and if you really see that there's a shift happening.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a serious impact in disconnection with people socially since the pandemic. I mean, there's studies that are showing that we've got an epidemic on our hands of loneliness, right? Because people are so consumed in their own lives and what's happening in their lives. I think for me, I'm a parent of two 20-year-olds. And so I pay attention to that generation specifically because that's where my heart is. But I also have a passion for the younger generation, the children that are coming out of the schools now that don't have the social connection cues that typically we would have with that interaction that we had. They missed out on a couple of years, during the pandemic. So I find that that generation, to me, the younger generation, children in particular, I have a sweet spot for, and I've created a course just for kids that are 6 to 9 on social connection cues, because I think if I had had that at that age, it would have changed my life, right? And so I think it's super powerful. Kids are more open and curious at that age as well to understand what other people are doing. And it kind of feels, they love connection cues because it feels like a silent game, right? Like you're like a detective looking for what people are doing based on what you say. So that's one piece. I think the shift is that my kids' generation, like they're your young late teens to mid 20s, they are more focused on, they're more aware. The internet's helped them be more aware about self-development. They're more tuned in to what they emotionally need. I do believe that they're more information seekers and will go out and find the information for themselves. But have they put it to the test? That's the piece. Like there's lots that you can learn, but not until you put it to practice are you truly going to learn, right? And so I think giving them the opportunities to go and have those conversations with people. What I'm finding remarkable is the workforce right now. We have 5 generations for the first time in history working together in the workforce. And we speak differently depending on our age, right? So, I had a young assistant ask me a while ago to go out for a break because she had some nice tea for me. And I thought, oh, she's so thoughtful. I'm a tea drinker. I love my tea. I couldn't wait, right? Is she going to bring me chamomile or oolong? Like, I was really excited. And when I met with her for this break, I quickly realized that the tea she was referring to was company gossip. So I didn't get my tea, but I did find out our supplier was having an affair. So, so the thing is, like, even the language that we're choosing, the slang that we use, the way that we communicate, and the fact that we've gotten used to having Zoom calls with black screens, gray screens, and not even showing up on a Zoom call, it's having an impact on our inability to communicate and connect. And, we're finding in the workforce, I'm finding with teams that I work with, a lot of the younger people that I'm working with just don't have the social connection cues. They don't understand. They haven't been in a situation in a workforce where, what is respectful behavior in a boardroom? What is expected for you when you walk into a job on your first day? All these kinds of things that they just don't have. They don't know. And so learning how to connect with strangers, learning how to be authentically interested, learning how to be a good listener in a meeting, learning when it's your time to actually contribute in a meeting. All of these kinds of things are areas where I'm finding that teams really need support right now.
Yeah. And what is the best way that those people can learn that? Is that about failing and trial and error? That's what I'm looking for. Is it that the best way? Like, maybe in a meeting, people fucked up or are so embarrassed about something that happens, and then you step out of the meeting, and then you can say like, here, read this book. You will learn. You will understand what went wrong in that meeting. Maybe that's the right moment for people to realize these kind of things. I don't know.
Yeah. They have to. People have to get to it themselves, right? They have to come to it because they just won't be open enough to learn. Like, you have to be ready. You have to. I always say you have to make the choice to grow. Like, you have to know you are going to stop a pattern or you're going to open up an opportunity, right? So there's one of those two things happen, right? And it's not until we're typically forced do we choose to grow. And so I think, when it
comes with pain, I think,
it does. It does. It's a motivator.
It comes with pain.
Yeah, for sure. You're not motivated to get better or understand more about yourself unless there's something that's at stake, right? And so high stakes make it more urgent. And so I think if you're, the workforce right now, you have AI generating resumes, you have content being generated for people. The real test in an interview in a work environment is a communication. It's a conversation, and how well you connect with people. At the end of the day, we like working with people we like, and that's the relationship that we need and the culture that we need for our people. And if you bring one person into your organization and it disrupts the entire organization, that's extremely damaging to your business. on so many levels.
Yeah, dangerous.
So I think the thing is to be able to really look at mentorship and training programs. A lot of my coaching that I do is with younger generation people in the workforce, managers and new leaders that just don't have that knowledge. They don't even understand. So we start with first an examination of their emotional intelligence. Like we're giving them an assessment and a report. Where are you standing in the 5 aspects of emotional intelligence? So you've got self-perception. Like, what are you thinking about yourself? Are you self-aware? How do you talk to yourself? That's where it all starts, like we talked about with thought flow. The second one is really your self-expression. How well do you express yourself? That's where I find the younger generation needs some more work. And then the third one is basically your interpersonal relationships. How are you doing in your interpersonal relationships? The fourth is decision making. Are you able to make decisions? Where's your emotion coming in decisions? And the fifth is stress management. Like, how are you handling stress in your life? And where do your emotions play in that? So once you do this assessment, people are blown away at how realistic it is and how truthful it is. It's on target because they're answering the questions. And it shows them, oh, here's an area in your life where you need to improve. And here's an area where you're strong. But here's a gap that we need to shorten for you to be able to advance more in the corporate world. And so it all begins with awareness, understanding where you're at right now and deciding where you want to go. And then you take the steps to get there.
Yeah, interesting. I'm out of the corporate world already for a while, actually, and a lot of my personal growth happened outside of the corporate world. And sometimes I ask myself the question if you're working in the corporate world and you discover this about yourself, because you have someone coaching you and you start to discover all the things that are going wrong, or you can improve, you can do better, that will improve the company and everything like that. Sometimes the journey can be so long and rough that the company is maybe not willing to invest in that for yourself, or maybe then it's the time to maybe find another job, switch companies, do something like that. I have no stats around that, and it also depends on everyone's journey individually, I would say. But do you have a kind of a feeling with that based on different examples or people that you know that have done this journey or this work?
Yeah, like if I understand your question, Henk, it's like what is it that propels them to advance themselves in the corporate world? Or can you reiterate that question for me again?
Yeah, it's more like, okay, the main motivation to go on a coaching project in the corporate world is it comes mostly from out of making the company better, like in terms of results, making the company culture better, become a better manager, these kind of things. But at some certain point, it all comes down to self-realization. There's a lot of new stuff that you start to learn from yourself. And the question is then how deep you sometimes can go, and is a company willing to invest enough in that so that hopefully you will become a better manager in the future, knowing that sometimes it can take a few years, it can take 5 years or something.
Yes. Yeah, I find that a lot of the people that are contacting me now to come in and speak to their teams or to do some coaching programs for their leaders, a lot of them are coming to me with the necessity to build and ignite and engage their teams. Like the people are leaving quickly, right? So if we're not motivating our teams to present themselves as their authentic selves, to learn and develop themselves, so that they can become better managers. The younger generation right now, they don't want to be managers. There's studies out there showing that they're passing up on management roles because it's just too much stress for little more pay. Yeah. And they're just like, it's not worth it. And so the benefit of managing others, which is such a privilege, and it's just my joy, actually, it was always mentoring and leading people. I think it's an absolute privilege to be a leader. And that joy is completely omitted from the corporate culture because the younger generation doesn't want that responsibility. They don't see the value in it, right? They just see it as being stressful. It's the companies that are bringing me in and having conversations with their managers who are new managers or leaders that have the potential for management that are getting ignited about the possibility of leadership because they're understanding more about themselves. So they're resisting people are typically resisting manager jobs or leadership jobs, and until they've done the work on themselves and they understand more about themselves. Because as you manage people, your stuff comes up, right? Like,
totally.
I remember I was in my 20s and I put my hand up to be a director of operations. I was mid-20s and I had like 14 people directly reporting into me. I had no idea what I was doing. Okay, I did, but I wasn't as skilled as I should have been. And so I remember at night for 6 months, I went into Harvard Business Review and I learned everything I could about leadership. Like I had to, because I was in this position of responsibility and I wanted to make sure that I learned what I was doing. And those first 3 months were the most painful months of my life. Like I had no idea how to lead people. And most of us don't until we're trained. But what was interesting about those first 3 months is I didn't learn first how to lead people. I learned about myself. And when I learned about what's stopping me, why am I saying things the way I'm saying them? Why am I resisting? Why am I interrupting? Why am I doing these things? And once I learned all those pieces, then that was aside and I was open and available to help and mentor others. And so when we look at bringing me into companies now, what's happening is they need help engaging their team. They need to be differential in the marketplace. They need to position their company as one that cares and develops their employees. And this is what's happening now. It's so much more important to the team to be developing and growing. And if they don't see that, they leave and they go to the next company. So we don't have that. Like my dad worked at IBM for 30 years, right? And I remember I'd wake up and I'd be going to school and I'd see him getting ready and he would be so unhappy. Like he just did not love that job. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't ever want to work in something that I'm not loving. Like I never want to have that feeling every day. I can still see him in my head. And at those days, he was putting on the full suit and going to work, right? And I remember asking him, why do you do your job? Like, what do you love about it? And he's like, well, I don't necessarily love it, Sandy, but it's something that I do to provide for the family. Now, that's the way it was then.
Yeah.
But now, when you look in the workplace,
it still is in a lot of cases.
It is. But I think also now we're looking at the situation individually and we're saying, what can this company do for me? Right? Is the first thing that we're asking, because there's opportunity everywhere and we can go and do a side hustle ourselves and make money. So it's not necessarily financial motivation. It's really about, can I connect with people? Am I getting behind a social impact? Is this company doing something that's going to change the world in some way? How can I be a part of a team that's making a difference? And those are the things that matter to people now. And so making sure that your communication is on point with that and that you're helping people to connect is the most valuable skill you can have right now in a workforce.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. I think also that's the only reason why managers or leaders want to become a leader, because they are doing that purposeful and they support the mission of the company. And if that's not the case, and if it's just only for the money, then people don't want to do that.
That's right. Yeah. It's got to touch your heart. I mean, we only have so many hours. So. We do what we do because we love it, right? And it's a lot of work. Yeah. You know how much work goes into doing this show. You know how much work goes into your programs. It's coming from a place of passion. And once like my mission to help people communicate, to connect better, it's what gets me up every morning. You know, I love jumping out of bed to do what I do. And not a lot of people can say that about their career until they dive into what do they emotionally need to be happy, right? And when you're aligned to that. My husband's in a role that is very structured, very similar. He knows exactly what he's going into every day, and that makes him happy. He can leave work where it is and he can come home. Well, that's safety, right? He's happy.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's who he is. But if I didn't understand that, I'd be like, well, why aren't you applying for that manager role? Or why aren't you doing this? Because that's who I am, right? So it's really important that we understand ourselves first and then support the people in our lives for who they are.
Yeah. Amazing. Before we end this podcast, is there one last thing that you want to share? Some topic that we maybe haven't talked about that can be interesting, and for our audience, of course, as well. The thing that was in my head the whole time, but I'm not sure if there's enough time for that, is the emotional blockers. I wanted to hear a few examples of
sure.
them. But if there is another thing you would like to share that you think that you find important, please do so.
Oh no, I'm happy to talk about the blockers, and then I can leave a little sentence at the end. But so the emotional blockers, I mean, there's 16 different ways that we block communication. And so in the research that I've done, one of the most popular ones is identifying. So that's when you're in a situation. So you're in a conversation with someone and they're telling you a story and you hear something and it activates a story in you and you interrupt and you take that story and you take it away from the person. So what we think we're doing is like, oh yes, that happened to me and it happened, blah, 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 and you start going on about the story. And what you've done is you've actually robbed them of the story. By the time you get back to that end of your story, they probably won't want to participate in the conversation. So those are the things we think we're building rapport, but what we're doing is actually we're blocking that connection. So that's one, for example, and lots of people do it. And when I share that with people in my coaching and my training, they're like, oh my gosh, I just did that yesterday. It happens all the time. Another one that is used quite often too. I was training this heavy equipment group, and there was this gentleman that was He was in the classroom and he was sitting there and he had his arms crossed. And he'd been with the company 40 years. And he's like, what's this chick going to tell me about communication? Like he was just like, I don't want to hear this. And I get that every once in a while, right? So I understand. I get it. No one wants to be pushed to do these things. So I just let it unfold and I went through the training and he's going through his workbook. And about 3 hours in, I see him writing notes in his workbook. And then the rest of the day, he's quite engaged in his notebook, doesn't participate much vocally, but he's engaged and off he goes. The next morning, I'm setting up for the next day of session and he comes in and he says, Sandy, I need to share with you what happened last night. He took the workbook home and he put it on the dining room table. And his daughter has picked up the book and started flipping through. And his wife came over and their other child. And the four of them sat at the dining room table and had dinner, going through the workbook and going through his examples. And he realized that his blocker is sending solutions. And they had this conversation. His daughter said, every time I share something with you, Dad, you always come up with a solution. And he's like, oh, and he didn't even realize that's what he was doing. But what she really wanted was to be heard or just to share, right? And so, from the learning there, sending solutions we do automatically, the best 4 words you can ever ask somebody, what do you need? Always ask them that in a conversation because there's no harm, there's no downside to it. They'll say, oh, I just need this, or this is great, if they're not ready to delve into details. Or they'll tell you exactly what they need. I need you to listen. I need you to come up with a solution. I need you to just be here for me and let me vent, So those are the things. And I think that's a question I'm constantly asking people in my life that I love and the people that I work with. What do you need? Because we don't ask it enough. And so when you ask that, the blockers tend to go away. So these are things that we do that we don't even realize we're doing that I felt was imperative that I share with people, because once you know, you can't unknow it and you're aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, amazing. So, is that the last thing that you wanted to share, or was there something else? Maybe a topic that you thought about yourself, that we haven't talked about?
Sure. I mean, I think what I'd say to everybody, what I always share with people are 2 things. One, just use curiosity as your superpower. It is the way to connect with people. It is the way that you will learn more about yourself, learn about others, and learn how to manifest in your life. That's number 1, is curiosity is your superpower, so use it. And ask questions that will crack people open. Ask questions at the right time, of course. You're not just going to ask, hi, how are you? And then say, what's your purpose in life? You're not going to do that. But asking at the right time and place to get someone to share with you. And the other piece is really about understanding what you emotionally need. Like truly, you cannot advance in life until you understand what it is you emotionally need to be happy in your personal and your professional life. So if you're struggling with a career choice, ask yourself, which magnet are you? Because that will drive you in the career that you need to be in to make you happy. If you're struggling in your relationships, looking at the way you're communicating to people and what's activating you in your emotional intelligence, really important. And just understanding, when you understand what makes you happy and you share that with people, you're building a more connected and a better world.
Totally. Yeah.
And what
Amazing.
it does is when you express what you emotionally need to be happy and you share your magnets, what's happening is you're spreading more love and acceptance in this world. And boy, do we ever need that right now.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, when you open up, people also open up automatically. And then that's the moment when you start really connecting with each other. So, so I think a message also is here, don't wait for the other. Just do it. Just do it yourself.
Yeah, like it's contagious. It's contagious. As soon as you ask a question, I often will be told from people, I'll meet people and do very little talking, just a lot of asking and listening. People will say, oh, I had the best conversation with Sandy. I'm just connected with her so well. And I probably said 2 or 3 words. It's because they felt heard. It's because they felt seen. And most importantly, it's because they felt valued. So do someone a favor. Do a stranger a favor. There's a movement here in Canada that I'm part of called the Gen Well Project. And it's really a movement for connection in Canada, to get out socially and connect with people and be a part of these movements, be a part of making someone feel seen, heard, and valued every day. You're in a store, ask a question. I've even gone to people that are having a tough day, and I'll say to them, you're having a tough day? Anything I can do to help? And you crack open the bubble there that they've put around them and opened up this vulnerability and humanity that we all need so badly and want. So yeah, please go and ask somebody a question, be curious, and find out what you emotionally need to be happy. It will change your life.
Yeah, totally. So true. It needs some courage though, but yeah.
The more you do it, the more courageous
it's really,
you get.
I think so. It's like the same with the muscle, training the muscle, right?
Yes.
That's what you can do with that as well. Yeah, amazing.
The upside of all of that, Henk, is that you don't even know what's coming, right? When you open up that opportunity to create a connection. I was on a plane and it was delayed, and this woman was really frustrated, and she had to go to the washroom or something, and she was all out of sorts about her bag. And so I just reached over and said to her, is there something I can do to help you? It was just one question. And that woman has become a fast friend of mine that we connect online socially, and she's a huge supporter of what I do. Just that one question brought us together. So if you just think about, it takes courage, but the more you do it, the more you love it. And all you do is think about you're creating more connection in the world.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah. So what is next for you? The book is already out, I think since 22. So all the work that you do is based on the book, the workshops, the podcast that you have as well. Do you have something coming up, something new, something on top of that, maybe a new book? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I always have something on the go because I'm driven by achievement. So I have a lot on the go.
Exactly.
I have a new book that I'm working on right now, actually, about communicating in your relationships, because people have asked for more on that, professionally and personally. So that's a new book that I'm working on right now. It should be out in the next 6 months. And then I have a program that I'm really happy with right now that is really making results for people. And that's the Magnetic Self program. So that's where people come and they get one-on-one coaching with me, but they get their emotional intelligence report. And so this is changing people's lives, right? So if you're struggling with, understanding why you're making the choices that you are in your life, or wanting to improve your relationships, then this is a first start, is to take this report, get this assessment done. And then I work with you one-on-one and I also have groups, but one-on-one to really move and shorten that gap that you have in your emotional intelligence to open up opportunities for connection and for growth. So if people want to lead people, ultimately, this is an absolute essential must. You must understand yourself before you can lead others. So that program I'm very passionate about. And then I'm doing speaking. Every week I do my podcast, and that's really short, under 10 minutes, soundbite on a communication tip every Tuesday. And I think we've done over 40 podcasts now, but it's 40 episodes, but I think the thing that's key about that is it's a quick way to learn a quick communication tip that you can try out that day. I didn't want to have a lengthy one. I wanted to have one we just don't have time to go through all that. So a short tip every week that really helps people. So that's magnetic communication. And just lots of speaking, lots of training, lots of coaching. So loving it.
Nice. Amazing. So where can people find you? What's the best way if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, to connect with me, there's multiple ways. You can connect with me on my site, sandygerber.com. In there is all my programs and my tools. The book is available Amazon, everywhere else, and on Audible. And you can reach out to me through social. I'd love to connect with you. If you want the quiz and have any questions, you can just reach out to me.
Nice. Yeah. I definitely recommend everybody to do that.
Thank you, Henk.
Really, thank you for this really inspiring and amazing conversation. I think you shared a lot of interesting topics and a lot of golden nuggets, that's what they say, that people can use in their daily life. So, I wish you a lot of success with the new book. I'm really looking forward actually to the release. So please let me know when that's happening.
I will.
And maybe come back to explain a little bit more about the book as well.
Yeah,
so
that's great. Thank you very much, Henk. Thank you for doing what you do with this program too. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of planning, a lot of structure, a lot of post-production. And most importantly, you're making an impact. And I really appreciate that I'm a tiny part of that. So thank you.
Thank you.